Hi book lovers, and welcome to my first video of 2026 and the first chapter in this little queer fantasy love story I'll be telling in the margins of my reading journal this year. I'm so excited about it, and I have the entire story arc planned out for the whole year. If you haven't watched my 2026 setup video, I was inspired by the romantic fairy tale vibe of this journal to let it tell its own story. In short, it's about two princes, a human prince and a fae prince, who fall in love with all the complications that brings. The first page I'm setting up is my January cover page, which I've retitled Chapter 1 in my storybook. As always, I start with a base of coffee-stained paper for that vintage handmade vibe. I make the paper myself. One sheet is a regular blank office copy paper, and on the other I printed a letter in a handwriting font before soaking it in coffee. I get the different shades by varying how long they soak and how strong I brew the coffee or tea. I like fastening the edges with a tape roller, and then I go in with a glue stick along the torn edges to make sure they adhere properly and don't flap around or come loose and mess up my writing. In Chapter 1, titled Through the Veil, the Fae Prince enters the human realm through a portal and becomes the first of his kind to walk the human world in ages. I don't imagine a Wheel of Time style gateway, but rather something more surreal and nature-inspired. Twisted trees and branches forming a living threshold in the forest. He breathes in the air of the human world for the first time and then makes his way to the royal castle as an envoy for the Fae. For decoration, I'm using my absolute favorite thing, rub-on stickers. I love them. They melt into the paper and become one with it in a way no other stickers do. My favorite brand is Stamperia, a Hungarian company. For this spread, I want to continue the nature foresty vibe to match the Fae Princess aesthetic as I imagine him walking through the woods. And so my story begins. When the veil stirs, the worlds breathe as one, and magic walks among mortals once more. Let's leave Fey Prince to his walk through the woods as he makes his way toward the royal castle and move on to my first book spread of 2026. It's a reread of an old favorite that's kind of special to me. A few years ago, I listened to the entire After series, which is about 80 hours of my life I am never getting back. I don't even know why I kept going, but I guess I got sucked in. It frustrated me so much. I just wanted to knock the couple's heads together. Afterwards, I experienced a complete burnout on toxic, codependent relationships. For some reason, Dark Space by Lisa Hendry showed up as a recommendation on Goodreads. I have no idea why, never read anything like it before, but it was a free listen on Storytel, so I hit play, and I was just wow. Here was a story about two men who genuinely support each other through everything they face. No toxicity, no destructive relationship dynamics. All the angst and conflict come from outside the relationship, and they just stand strong together through it. They're so good together. It's a sci-fi story set during a war against a race of faceless aliens. It's told through the eyes of 19-year-old Brady Garrett, who was drafted into the military at 16 and has spent the last 3 years aboard one of the space stations protecting Earth from these technologically superior aliens. He is so young and he is so scared of the aliens, of the big black, for his little sister back on Earth. And he's so angry at the world, at the system, at being drafted, at everything. He has 4 more years stuck on this station, and all he wants is to go home and make sure his sister is safe. He's been through horrible things, and he's trying so hard to be brave. Everything has hardened him into this snarky, lovable recruit with a chronic inability to keep his mouth shut. Enter legendary Lieutenant Fighter Pilot Cameron Rushton, who was kidnapped by the aliens 4 years ago and is suddenly returned in a life-preserving alien pod. Of course, the officers make a mess of opening it, and Cameron accidentally ends up dependent on Brady's touch to keep his heart beating. They're confined to a room in the officers' quarters while the military tries to figure out what to do with Cam, who brings back this message from the aliens: "The faceless are coming." Cam and Brady must remain in constant physical contact to keep Cam alive. Brady essentially functions as his battery, and there's only one bed. They're mentally linked as well, sharing parts of each other's minds. It's an amazing story, the first in a trilogy, and I highly recommend all of it. It was my big MM awakening, and since that day I've hardly read anything else. I wanted to add some more stars to this spread, but I didn't have any more star stickers. Then I remembered I got this gold paste in an advent calendar last year, and I have never used anything like it. It's sticky and it's messy, Do you think I'm going to mess it up like I usually do? I think it's meant to be used with stencils. I don't have any star-shaped stencils or any stencils at all, but I do have this metal piece with star cutouts. I usually don't have proper tools for this, so I'm using a butter knife. It actually didn't turn out too bad, and it was easy to clean up as long as it hadn't dried. That's how it turned out. I'm happy. It really catches the vibe of the story. Moving on to A Second Harvest by Eli Easton, about a widowed Mennonite farmer. Since it's set on a farm, I wanted a ripe wheat color palette for this one. Enter Christy, a graphic designer and Manhattan party boy who needs a break from that lifestyle. He moves into the house next door to David, the farmer, and they strike up a friendship over cooking together. I don't know much about the Mennonites, but as I understand, they're somewhat similar to the Amish. I didn't get much of that vibe from David, though. He has a phone, a truck, modern conveniences. The image on the cover doesn't quite match the David we meet in the story. When David's adult children come home from college, they have a very hard time accepting Christy, who is to them obviously gay. And this isn't exactly the most progressive area. Homophobia is rampant, which Christy experiences in the worst way. But again, the support within the couple is unwavering. David refuses to bend to his children or to the community. I got a surprise at the end when they mentioned the Swedish Mennonite church and how accepting it is of gay relationships and even gay marriage. I'd never heard of it and had to look it up. There are no Mennonites in Sweden at all. But it's nice that my country is portrayed as a beacon of acceptance. We're not, but anyway. Next up is Unbreak Me by Jessie H. Rain, a new-to-me author. I printed 2 alternative covers for this book. One is the classic Dude, Where's My Shirt? And the other is a sweet illustration. I love that more authors are choosing illustrated covers instead of generic stock images, so I'm going with that one. This one is also set on a farm, but in South Africa. I loved the beautiful backdrop of the South African countryside and the haunting mood it brought. I don't think I've read anything set in South Africa before. David is a young, depressed British man with a history of self-harm who is sent to this farm by his parents to give him a change of scenery and hopefully lift him out of his depression. The entire story is told as his diary. The owner of the farm, Jonathan, is this hunky man David immediately begins to thirst after. It's a slow burn, but once they hook up, it gets quite steamy. But of course, David's stay at the farm has an end date. He has a life and job in England to return to. I cried. I don't do that often with books. Last year I only had 3 on my made me cry list, but this one made me weep. If I'd read it last year, it would have been a serious contender for my top read of 2025. I loved it so much. I highly recommend it. Next, for something completely different, a rather chaste Regency romance, Mr. Collins in Love by Lee Welch. Of course, we all know the ridiculous Mr. Collins from Pride and Prejudice, whom we only see through Elizabeth's eyes in the original story. But here we get his story, and it's quite cute, while still preserving his traditional personality. His childhood best friend, Jem, shows up at his rectory looking for work, and after some serious internal debate about whether it would be too extravagant to add another person to his humble staff, Mr. Collins hires him. His entire personality sort of revolves around what is proper and what others might think. If you're looking for steam, you bought the wrong ticket with this one. I don't think they even kiss. The most intimate moments are brief scenes of self-service satisfaction in each other's company. In fact, we don't get many scenes of the two of them together at all. I found the title Mr. Collins in Love a bit misleading, actually. There's no sweeping love story, only Mr. Collins realizing he needs to keep Jem in his life. And of course, Lady Catherine the Bug pressures him to marry. He is rejected by Elizabeth and eventually enters a lavender marriage with Charlotte, who is awesome. She certainly knows what she wants out of life. It was cute, but it didn't exactly rock my world, so I'm giving it 3 stars and a single page layout. The same goes for Bossy by N.R. Walker. I've read it before, and it's a nice, angst-free, cute read when I'm in the mood for that, but with a lot more steam than Mr. Collins, so you might want to buy this ticket instead. It follows 2 well-off members of Sydney's elite, Michael, an upscale real estate agent, and Bryson, heir to a hotel empire, who wants to try his luck starting his own business, a Singaporean-style coffee shop. There are plenty of high-end designer brands casually name-dropped throughout. They meet at a bar in the opening scene and talk for about 30 seconds before deciding to hook up. Then they keep hooking up without knowing each other's first names. That becomes their thing. About halfway through, though, their paths cross professionally and they learn each other's identities. And then they keep hooking up even more frequently. That's about it. It's sweet, fun, completely angst-free, and coffee. And finally, the much anticipated Kismet by Nikki James, one of my very favorite authors. I was on it the moment it dropped on Audible. It's a Canadian police detective story, but very different from her Valor and Doyle and Shadowy Solutions series, and it's a standalone. Detective Kobe Haven works for the Ottawa Police Department, and Dominique Chevalier is the new forensic pathologist he's crushing on. For the character images, I wanted them to resemble police ID cards. To get the square shapes and consistent sizing, I made a template from another piece of paper. I find it hard to get perfectly straight angles if I freehand it instead of aligning everything with a dot grid in the journal. There's a serial killer on the loose who stages his victims in elaborate, almost ritualistic displays to be discovered. The victims all turn out to be horrible men with histories of assaulting women, so we're dealing with something of a vigilante. Dominic's life revolves around his 2-year-old baby girl and mourning her mother who passed away when she was born. But he reluctantly lets Kobe into their lives and falls in love with him. I've created and printed little badges titled Books That Made Me Cry, Plot Twist, Favorite Couple, Strong Women, stuff like that. And I'm giving this book 2 badges. I can't reveal which ones because I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm saving space here and will add them after filming. It's a great mystery with plenty of compelling suspects, and I'm proud to say I figured out the killer about halfway through. Four stars for Kismet, and that's my final spread of January. A great start to my reading or listening year, and Unbreak Me is my top read of the month. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you'll tune in each month to follow not just my reading but my romantasy love story as well. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Bye!